Alrighty, so this will be unscripted, and you've all obviously joined because you want to know why I put my entire life savings, which wasn't much to be honest. Full transparency, was probably only like 18 grand into XRP, but it's still a pretty bold move to go all in on something and do it over a sustained period of time with such conviction. And for me, it all started quite spiritually. I made a bold move during COVID to move from Sydney, which is one of the big cities in Australia for those international listeners, to a very small town in far north New South Wales, just outside Byron Bay. And in doing so, I endeavoured to get involved with a financial business which is now Cashew, our company. And at the time, I was sort of privy to investing and the power it could sort of serve over a prolonged period through compound interest, but I hadn't really actively partook in it because I didn't really have the funds or the capital. But that all sort of changed when we got the stimulus happening in COVID. I started to dabble with stocks, did quite well on Tesla, did quite well in the EV space, with lithium mining companies, and that sort of gave me the taste. And then pair that with the business that I was involved in, Cashew, that I'm a co-founder in now. I had the thirst for knowledge, so to speak. I'd never really invested in crypto before, but I was getting pretty confident with stocks. So I spent the best part of a year and a half dollar cost averaging, so investing every single week whatever leftover money I had into ETFs, mainly AI ETFs, Nifty 50 India Fund, cybersecurity ETFs, and the top 100 US stocks ETF. And I knew that if I could just build a bit of a base over a year and a half, things would look pretty good at that time in the future. But then, very strangely, I was introduced to XRP. I was introduced to it in a very left of field way. It wasn't through the investing circles, it wasn't through me stumbling upon a YouTube video, it wasn't through a friend. This was back, in 22, in the darkest of days in crypto, post Sam Bankman-Fried disaster, post Silicon Valley Bank, or around Silicon Valley Bank collapse. And I was playing golf with this guy. I won't mention his name, but he'll know who he is if he's listening. And it was just me and him on a Sunday morning. We're playing comp, and we were talking about, the geopolitical climate. I've been very inclined to understand all that for a while now, and a lot of my commentary online is to do with that. So we were talking about that, and obviously things were pretty grim then, and they were pretty grim until a few months ago, really. And he said, "Oh, look, have you heard of this crypto asset, XRP?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And he said, "Well, I've put my life savings into it, literally every single penny." And I sort of said, "Well, fuck, it's a bit risky. Like, why would you do that?" And he then proceeded to give me the spiel that we've all heard. Us XRP holders understand all too well, the deep-rooted embedding of a company across all the tentacles within finance and geopolitics and global agendas. But he said it with such conviction, and the fact that he'd put his life pretty much into this rung alarm bells for me. So at that point, at that juncture, I started to do a little bit of digging, but as you can all appreciate, it's a very, very big task to wrap your head around, and requires thousands of hours of research really to feel it in the soul. He was a religious man, and he kept coming back to the Bible. He kept coming back to a lot of religious sentiments and philosophical sentiments within that sphere when he first proposed it to me. And at the time, I hadn't turned back to Christianity. I have since turned back to Christianity and actively go to church and live by a lot of the guiding principles. So I guess that's why, upon him telling me the first time, I kind of ignored it. I think I bought a couple of $100 and I left it. I didn't touch it for another 6 months and really didn't do much research after I dipped the toes in, so to speak. But then, right around that 6 months later, and I'd never played with this particular guy at the golf club more than this one occasion. I'd seen him in passing, but we never played. It wasn't a part of the regular group. It was all just random the first time we played. But 6 months later, same thing happened. Sunday morning, it was very random. I usually play Saturdays. Go in. We're in the same group, and we get chatting again. Obviously, the geopolitical sentiments that we discussed had advanced from the first time, and there was a lot more common footing, and he had elucidated some of the developments that had taken place within the crypto world, and particularly within the XRP community. I told him that I'd invested a little bit, but not much, and I didn't really understand it. And we spent the next 4 hours just talking about it. And he really got me up to speed in that second session, and I started to almost see the light, so to speak. And this would have been about a year ago now, at the time of recording this. And it was at that moment when I went on a tirade of research. I mean, it would have been, I'm probably pushing 3,000 hours now. All my spare moments, a lot of my work, sitting there till I sleep, reading and researching, watching videos, understanding not just XRP, but the whole ecosystem and the financial interlacing that I had been missing within my geopolitical understanding. So I got to about 6 months ago where I'd built up that kitty, and I knew because of the research that things weren't going to move until that court case settled in August. I knew it'd be stagnant, so here and there I'd be able to dollar cost average on small purchases, but I knew that the time would come when I would inject all of the capital that I had accumulated and worked hard to build within the dollar cost averaging within the ETFs, and I could take my chance and put it into this asset that I understood wholeheartedly. And that time came around in about July this year. Don't quote me on dates, but it was sort of around the time where there's a huge dip off the back of the Japan economic crash, and that was my moment, because I'd already been monitoring the markets. I understood inside out. I knew what was coming. I just wanted to wait for the best moment to inject a lot of capital. Well, not a lot of capital. My perspective, it was a lot of capital. It was all the stuff I'd just worked towards saving. And by the way, I did about probably 45% in that year and a half on the capital I put into my ETFs and stocks and stuff. So it wasn't a huge kitty. It was very modest. But I then decided to pull it all and move it all into pretty much 95% into XRP, and then I scattered the other 5% across the other utility tokens, XDC, XLM, and IOTA are the ones that I'm holding. And I had complete conviction. I don't need to sit here and tell you that all the things you already know, the 1,500 banks that they've got, the major banks that haven't announced, the fact that they're going to get regulatory compliance early next year, and pretty much we know they'll probably flip Bitcoin within the next year or so. I don't need to tell you my why, because you wouldn't be watching this video if you didn't already know the things that I have read and know. So my journey with it has been a lot more spiritual, and I look back at that guy at golf who was too conveniently injected into my life on 2 separate occasions, and the second was the final tap on the shoulder to take this seriously, because this for me is about creating a family from this wealth, breaking out of the shackles of all the things that we've had to go through the last 5 years as a mid-20 to now 30-year-old. The cost of living's cooked. Can't buy a house. Impossible to get a head start. You got to think outside the box. You got to get creative. And this, once I understood the ecosystem, was the ticket. You just had to have some balls to execute, and that's what I've done. The investment's now well over 6 figures, from a modest, I think, $18,000 is all I could put in across the assets that I put them across. And as you guys know, it's probably it'll probably reach 7 figures by the end of this cycle across all my investments. And that should give us the chance, my partner and I, to start the family that we want to start, and move on with the life that we've been envisaging for a long time, which is really exciting. So for me, XRP is a spiritual vehicle to the promised land, so to speak. And it was a gift from God through that guy that forced my hand to go and look into it. The cookies are laughing at me, but yeah, I'm serious. It was, for me, it was biblical. So that was my journey with it. I won't bore you with all the, the hundreds of pages of fundamentals I could give you as to why it's an amazing investment, and it's going to go on to do amazing things. You can go and watch my Instagram, where I break all that down in shorter form videos, and I've been doing that for 6 months. So that's my story with it. I hope some people can relate, and good luck to all the holders. And if you're new to the space and you haven't bought into it, go do your own research. This thing's going to be around for the next 100 years. Don't get too caught up on price points. Never financial advice from me. It's just my journey. But I hope in some way this story strikes a chord with some of you, and I will see you on the next video. We have our podcast on this channel every single week, where I talk with Big Saucy about geopolitics and the markets. So stay tuned for that every week. And go follow us at Cashew Nate, my personal page on Instagram and TikTok, and our podcast, The Red Hot Show, on Instagram and TikTok as well. Cheers, guys.